So, all right, I'm pressing record. All right, so I also don't want you to think of this as like an interview. It's just we're just chatting. Robert, it's good to see you.
Always lovely to see you. It's been so long.
20 years. This is a special episode. We're going to talk about happy things, mostly, because we're talking about one of the greatest things on the planet, which is olive oil. And you have a particularly interesting relationship to olive oil. You have been peddling it, so to speak, for decades.
Yeah.
And then not just any olive oil, but Palestinian olive oil. So, Robert, would you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what Zatoun is, the organization?
Well, Zatoun is the Arabic word for olive, and we've just gone through the 21st anniversary. So the first sale of the olive oil was April 2004. And I have to say, it's been really a lifelong project, even though it's only 20 years and I'm a lot older than that. But it's really given me such incredible meaning and connection to the people that I care about and love and didn't know until I started Zatoun. And so Zatoun has really built an incredible community around itself, both in Canada and the United States. And that was the whole idea. The idea was to use Palestinian olive oil to connect with ordinary, everyday Canadians and Americans so that they get a feeling, an experience of Palestine. I started out thinking, how could I become active, in terms of the Palestinian question? And I just knew I didn't want to do politics. I didn't want to do journalism or media or that kind of thing. I just knew that words and images never worked for Palestine because they were ultimately unreliable. They could be spun. They could be
it's how they get published. That doesn't belong to Palestinians.
Yeah, exactly. No. So
that's the issue.
I love words and images, but
exactly.
I just know
it's their reception.
The reception and the manipulation that happens in the media producing process. I just wanted to circumvent that. I didn't want gatekeepers. I wanted to go directly to Canadians and Americans and just touch them with the olive oil. And it worked. It really, really worked.
It was a huge thing. I was there at the beginning. I think it was the first year.
It was the first year. Yeah. You were a young man then.
Yes. So are you. I remember going to your house to get the first, and it was just like out of your...
Oh, it actually always has been out of my garage and basement and out of people's garages and closets and so on. Because the whole idea was that it wasn't a business. It was a community project. And what I did was really, I just served up the olive oil and brought it to the continent and just really let it go from there and have people take it up in whatever way they wanted to or could in their own communities. And I have to say, it's like I'm always amazed at the creativity, the commitment, the devotion that people have taken on themselves to use the oil as a way to touch people, to communicate, because speaking about Palestine's got to be the hardest thing in the world, and, certainly 20 years ago and now with Gaza and the genocide, it's easier. It's horrible, but it's easier to talk about it. Whereas back then, 20 years ago, you couldn't even say the word Palestine. It was Palestinians. And it was like these are like aliens that never touch the ground. They're up there in the clouds and they're called Palestinians. And there was no such thing as Palestine. And so for me, I really wanted to bring people into relationships, into engagement, into community. And people have really answered that call, just like I answered the call to find something as a vehicle. And so when you're holding a bottle of olive oil and talking about Palestine, it's a whole different experience. It's so tangible, but not just tangible in the sense of a rock or something. It's a universal symbol that people can just so easily connect to it. It's a symbol of divinity. It's a symbol of life. It's a symbol of victory.
I mean, the olive is a magical...
Oh,
it's a magical fruit.
Absolutely.
Fruit is a fruit, yeah. Botanically, I think it's a fruit, yeah.
It's a fruit. And the thing is, there's no limit to the symbolism and the utility and the...
It's a giving tree. It's a giving tree. It gives so much.
When I think about it, I think of it not just as a food item. I think of it as it's got a spiritual dimension. In fact, in the various religions, I mean, the olive oil is part of the ritual. It's part of baptism. It's part of the last anointing. So at the point of entry into life and the exit of life, there's the olive oil, And in fact, the word Messiah or Christ means the anointed one. So, it has something for everybody. So whether they're Christian or Muslim or, or Jewish or atheist, it's got something for everyone. And that's, I think, the magic of it and what made me so happy that it was something that I could bring. And really, I have no regrets. I mean, I had to give up my career as, paying career as a consultant in marketing and strategy and such, but no regrets. No regrets. It's been...
I mean, you sold tens of thousands of bottles?
Oh, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Close to a million.
Of cases, I meant? Yeah.
Yeah, cases, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, over 20 years.
I mean, you were breaking the blockade on Palestine.
I was, I have to say, I wasn't the first person to sell olive oil. There had been other ones, locally in like Walnut Creek and other places. But I think California,
right,
and
so it's diaspora initiatives.
Yeah, exactly. But I think I'm the one who really took it at a higher level of distribution that went more than local. It went basically continental. If you think of Canada, the United States as kind of the northern part of the continent, and then also in that particular way of engagement. It wasn't about, I mean, I would ship sometimes $10,000 of olive oil. That's awesome. Just on the promise of payment. And I'd wait a year or 2 years for that payment over time. So it was an exercise in trust and faith. And that's the way I think of it. To me, the olive oil was an ambassador. So part of that ambassadorship is really having that engagement. It's, in modern capitalism, your relationship is with a mall.
Yeah.
That's my relationship is with Yorkdale Mall or Hillcrest, whatever the mall is. That's bullshit. It's not relationship. Yeah. I mean, relationship is people to people. And I can't tell you how often I heard, people knocking on someone's door to get olive oil, and it's someone they lost contact with 20 years ago, and they've known each other in the past. This happened over and over and over again. How many people reconnected over Zatoun, over Palestine?
Well, it's the latter, really. It really, because in some ways, I mean, obviously it's both, but I think in the sense that Palestinians and Palestine have been so, let's say, sanctioned, or let's better correctly, hexed.
Yeah, we've
right?
been maligned.
Maligned, hexed, everything, where even the name itself, as you said, was unspeakable. Yeah. So the flag, I mean, there was just that crazy picture of Ben Gvir pointing to a flag, like the silly meme. And it's like this very existence of a Palestinian is threatening to this strange class of people called Zionists. And for whatever reason, that took hold. I mean, there's lots of reasons, and we can explain them, and they're pretty clear, actually. That that mentality took hold here and dominated for decades and decades, where one side got to tell their story over and over again and sell their story and put made in Israel and this and that and whatever, and you have to go to the ends of the earth to just get Palestinian olive oil, which is one of the most highly craved, I mean, there's lots of different cultures that produce olive oil, but Palestinian olive oil is particularly good.
And it's particularly good because also it's not industrial. See, that's the thing about Palestine. It's not an industrial place. It's not industrial agriculture. It's not agricultural or industrial plastic and so on. And that makes all the difference. So Israel talks about making the desert bloom. They didn't make the desert bloom.
It was already blooming.
It was already blooming. All they did was industrialize it. And so they could produce these massive quantities, per acre.
Hydroponic tomatoes.
And all kinds of stuff, fertilization, irrigation, and so on. So, to me, what's important is that people recognize Palestine. And, and I go back to, I mean, you're in comparative literature, Said's permission to narrate, which is so incredibly important and incisive and really summarize it. But I was
And
just
he wrote that in like early 80s.
Absolutely.
Like you couldn't even.
And that's how we all feel.
Yeah.
Palestinians feel, we need permission to narrate. And this, goes back to the 80s with Said and everybody. Even if you didn't know about his phrase, you felt it. Yeah. But there's also another level, which is horrendously horrible. And that is permission to exist. So Palestinians, it's not even it's certainly in North America, whether it's the States or Canada and perhaps parts of Europe, it's almost like we need permission to exist. And that's soul crushing. And in a way, the olive oil was a salve to heal the soul. Because people, how do they know the Palestinian soul and what it has gone through for the last 120 years or so? Because it didn't start just, on October 7th or on 1967 or in the it goes way, way back to the Balfour and before. And this slow erosion that just picks up speed and momentum and accelerates, and it gets crazier and crazier and more insane. And that's the Zionist project. The Zionist project doesn't know when to stop. It's got no brakes. It can't stop. It can't stop. It's like a shark. It's got to keep moving. It's got to keep devouring and doing its stuff. And maybe it's taken a genocide to change that equation, that character. We still have to see it in the sense of, opposition to it. And that's the other thing is I really believe that Palestine has won the people. And Zatoun proves it. It's the institutions, it's the power centers that's all that Israel's got is the power centers. Of course,
which are themselves dwindling. Because that's power centers are American fundamentally, and America's power is declining. And this genocide is a ramp up of violence, I think, out of a sign of desperation of, we don't have much time left because our leash holder and our principal supplier is like flushing itself down history's toilet. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do if we can't fly in American weapons every 5 seconds?
It's you got to look at, I think, at meta history. We're really coming to a point with the, Ukraine and Russia, BRICS and so on. All these things are kind of coming to a point, and Gaza's part of that.
Yep. It might be the frontier of it. It might be like the most advanced site of this conflict, of that decline.
Well, you could look at BRICS. You could look at BRICS from an economic level. You could look at Russia from a military level of change. And Palestine is at the level of soul. It's at the level of spirit and culture. So, because what does Palestine have? It doesn't have the economy. It doesn't have the military. All it has is its ability to endure.
Steadfast.
And steadfast, which is samud, which is another word for you could say, endure. One of my favorite quotes that I came across in the last 2 years or so is by an Irishman named Terence McSweeney. And he was at one time the mayor of Dublin. And he died in a hunger strike in a British prison in 1920. And he said, victory comes to those not who inflict the most, but endure the most. Who's endured more than the Palestinians?
That's a painful statement, though.
It is. Absolutely. It's a hugely painful statement. But what are you going to do? There is no other avenue other than martyrdom. Palestinians have tried
resistance,
resistance, and that's the other thing is through the genocide we've come to a new stage, whereas the talk pre October 7th was coexistence, right? Whatever that means, whatever that means. But what's happened since October 7th is co-resistance. So Gaza has become at the forefront of not just Palestinian resistance, but global resistance. And you could see that, so the keffiyeh is no longer just a Palestinian symbol. It's a symbol of global resistance. because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about global Palestine. The world is, as a totality, through technology and surveillance and whatever, is actually turning into Palestine. Mm-hmm. We're talking about global Palestine here.
Yeah, Gaza is the future for a lot of the world.
Yeah. So
if the imperialists are allowed.
Exactly. Yeah. So Palestine is really a harbinger. It's a window into the future that the world faces. And I think through the genocide, particularly, people are waking up to that. I had wished they had woken up to it 10 years ago, 20 years ago, because it was in the cards. But sometimes I think people generally need a sledgehammer, unfortunately. You know?
It's also the people, like, it's our part of the world that's the problem. Like, we live in such, at least part of our population lives so in some, let's say, sociopathic bubble, economic bubble, that shields you from the chaos upon which this whole thing is built and functions. So in some ways, like, the confrontation in Gaza is where you see, like, oh, there's this whole underworld of our planet where dirty things happen. And you people talk about rights and freedom and, liberty. This is the most peaceful time in human history. And then the rest of us, we see what's really up. And in fact, it's the opposite, that wars have never been this insanely violent and spreading, and to the point where, this entity wants to nuke its neighbors. And the only thing that stops it from nuking, say, Lebanon is the fact that there will be consequences, ecological consequences for themselves. I mean, this is where they've come to, that the only people who back them are genocidal freaks, like that they have to pay off to come and visit. Like, people lose their jobs for Palestine all the time. They don't care. They go and say, I'm proud to have lost my job. I wish I could have lost my job, except I'm my own boss, so I can't fire myself.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter. At this point, nothing matters compared to the urgency of confronting this demon entity.
Yeah.
What is important? Your job? Like your email? Like what? Who cares? Like nothing matters.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's as you say. And my mission, so to speak, with Zatoun, and right from the beginning, was a particular message, was that Palestine is not just about Palestine. It's not about them over there. It's about us here and everywhere. And it's, as I said, it's just taken a genocide for people to recognize that equation. Palestine equals us. And we need to wake up and become active, because our rulers, our establishment, whether it's the politicians or the media or academia and so on, I mean, they have that Zionist spirit, which is one of supremacists. It's like, you people don't matter. You elect us, but it doesn't matter. Conservative, liberal, Democrats, Republicans, the game is the same. And so, it's a wake-up call. And, you can't predict when and where and how, but you can see the momentum gathering. And we're coming to this kind of crescendo between the BRICS and China and the tariff war and Ukraine and Russia and Gaza and the South, the global South, and Donald Trump. I mean, it's this crazy symphony.
And in the middle of all this is the humble olive tree.
Yeah. Well, because in a way, it is like, that's the right word, humble. That's the right word. And in a way, it calls us back to humble humanity. Because there's been this incredible hubris, whether it's American or Israeli or British or what, it's this incredible hubris. Oh, and not even just nations. I mean, think of the oligarchs and technologists and, technocrats. And, it's this incredible hubris that says, we can take you to Mars and you'll be happy. There's something wrong there. And so
you'll be happier because we're going to burn this planet down, and the few of you who can afford it can find a home on the Mars and living under our sovereignty, that we lease to you.
Well,
I mean, that's their dream.
That's
the thing. In some ways, Palestinians, for whatever reason, have now have been the people who have been like the people who have had to foot the bill, so to speak, for the confrontation between like that part of the world and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other examples of it, but in the sense of this is there's two models of the world in what's in historic Palestine. There's one model that faces westward, that is a Joseph Conrad novel unfolding at the moment, that like people are just shooting into the nights, like hoping to kill anything they can. And the other side like plants olive trees, raises their children, like just goes about their lives trying to keep themselves like just basically alive. And like, which side are you going to be on? Like, which side? And like that, the world knows what's up.
Yeah, absolutely. The world knows. And to the extent that, they're not kept in that bubble. I mean, that's the challenge is, it's not a naturally occurring bubble. It's an engineered bubble that we have to dismantle, pierce and dismantle. And that's the Facebooks and the Googles and the various, prints or whatever, and the academes. I mean, my God, to see what's happening on American universities and Canadian ones. I mean, it's beyond sad. It's repulsive. It's reprehensible. And that we're going down that road. I mean, for me, I could just see Canadians, Americans going down the road of Palestinians in the face of Zionism. It's the same restriction, surveillance, strangulation. We're being strangled. We're being strangled culturally and more economically and occupationally. Don't want to turn this into a huge bitch session about how
this
negative.
This is a podcast. That's what it's for, sir.
About how terrible things are. But I'm always, if you get my newsletter from Zatoun and so on, there's always incredible optimism there. There's incredible optimism because we are heading in a good direction. There's huge sacrifices. There's, the martyrdom of the people of Gaza. And, to a different extent in the West Bank and the extent of 100-year history of this. But seeing that there is an end to this road. And you have to, I guess in a way, live in faith. I live in faith that there is a progression, a momentum, and it's not sustainable. And the cost of sustainability or unsustainability in cases like this is a huge amount of destruction, damage, and martyrs. And I have to tell myself, maybe there is no other way.
I agree with you. I don't. There was never a scenario here where Zionists just press Control Alt W or Control Alt like they're not just gonna quit.
Exactly.
It takes an immense violence. Like it took violence to root Zionism, and it's gonna take violence to uproot Zionism, and it's not gonna go without a fight.
Absolutely.
And the genocide is a way of sending a message. It's like you keep revolting against us, and you'll see this is what happens to you. 90% of your homes are going to be turned into rubble. We're going to burn you in tents alive. And I actually coming to think that they want the footage out just to show for people to see, because it's for their own base, first of all, to see that, because they take sadistic pleasure in Palestinian screams and death, and that's what's uniting them more and more. Like that sadistic pleasure, but also they want the world to see that this is what we're willing to do, and we'll do it to you too, or we'll have our own people do it to you. So just this other day, I saw a crazy post on one of these Zionist accounts online saying that, well, Europe is showing that they're going to be threatening to sanctioning us. Israel has a lot of cards to play, which one of them could be, like assets, is like radical assets on their territory, like which basically admitting to the fact that. Yeah, Zionists run false flag operations around the world.
And have for a long, long time.
And it's been it's one of the structuring organizational principles of what we call terrorism, is the fact there's a ton of false flags planted upon a lot of them Palestinians to draw them as the worst people on the planet, fierce, and then the pinnacle of that was the widespread campaign of lies that they spread about October 7th. Palestinian commandos raided set a series of colonial outposts on the border and managed to snag captives, most of whom were most of them were active soldiers. These are all like normal things. These are all things that happen in war. And Israelis themselves blew their own people out of the water with tanks, like that's with Apache helicopters, and then they use their media power to sell that, to blame that on the Palestinian enemies, and then they turn that into the basis to do the worst thing humans can do, which is genocide. Yeah. I mean, just narrating it like that makes you go crazy. And the fact that you're not allowed to say this stuff, that you have to go out on like the circuit of, tinfoil hat shows like mine, and this is the only home you can do for that stuff. I mean, it's changing. Yeah. They're finally saying it. They're finally showing, like, I guess at a certain point, will it come to pass that their soft power won't be able to overcome the sheer hatred that they're engendering with their actions, the disgust and the revulsion and all the evil things that they do, that they proudly announce.
Well, they do. And I take an even larger view of that, a higher view of that. And, as you say, the visibility is not accidental. What the enterprise is about, I think, at a much higher level than just Palestine, Israel, it's really global, is really to crush the human soul and the human spirit. It's like, we're going to show you the worst, and you're going to be helpless.
And you're going to film it and post about it and cry about it, and we're going to gloat.
Yeah, and you'll be helpless, and your soul will be crushed, right? And so when you think of situations, whatever situations, whether they're military or challenges, it's really about a quality of soul and spirit to overcome something. And when you crush the soul, it's like, how do you come back from that? And so to me, I mean, Israel has a disciplined army.
They do?
They're very disciplined. Oh, yeah. I mean, you couldn't run an army without discipline. So that all these images are getting out and so on. It's
intentional.
It's intentional.
But the thing is, there is a discipline to their lack of discipline. I would agree that it's intentional. Because they need to unleash something in them to do what they're doing, and you can't. That's not like a blade that you can just temper in fire, right? Like, that's a weapon. But then, like, you go around the world and you bring that with you. People are revolted by you. People know who you are, and that's why they're desperately trying to shut down all these accountability archives and the IDF soldiers. Like, the traces that they left behind will haunt them forever. And even worse, their own children will see that. Their own children will see it one day, and I think this will turn against their own communities. I mean, it's already happening.
It's happening. And of course, if you're sane, you see what you're saying. But if you're insane and you're power hungry and you're supremacist, you're oblivious to these realities. I mean, there's Haadet's printed a picture of eclairs, chocolate eclairs. I don't know if you saw them with the words
"Finish them all."
Let the IDF mow the lawn. It's just like unbelievable. So it's not just Netanyahu.
No, it's the whole society.
It's the whole society. It's the whole project.
Diaspora too. Diaspora Zionists are just as bad, if not worse.
They are. Yeah.
I guess my question is, like, I have this question for Palestinians, like, I don't know why, or for whatever reason, history thrust upon you, your people, the worst enemies you could ever imagine. Yeah. And part of that story was that you welcomed them into your home because you're kind, loving people, and you said, "Sure, we have a history of coexistence. This is no problem." Yeah. And they took advantage of that, and they brought in and then, I mean, obviously the Brits helped, and they, put it wasn't just Palestinian, let's say, naivete. It wasn't that. And they knew what was up, and they revolted. Yeah. So, like, it's not even that. But at the essence of this is a story about, guests coming into your home and kicking you out.
Well, absolutely. Well, you have to go back and look at where Palestine is situated. Palestine on the eastern shores of the Mediterranean is at the exact point where three continents meet. You have Europe, you have Asia, you have Africa. And in that geography, you have unique flora and fauna that meets there from all three continents. There's no similar configuration anywhere in the world. But it's not just flora and fauna. It's religion. It's languages. It's people. I think of Palestine as the original multicultural society. And it's not fabricated. It's organic. And so for centuries and millennia, it's been at the center of that world. And so think of the richness. Think of the heritage. And think of the Zionist project actually privatizing it. It's a world heritage culture and geography. And what Israel did, or Zionists did, is they privatized it. So, no, world. This is no longer a world heritage. This belongs to us. And so for me, the tragedy is not just a Palestinian tragedy. It's a world tragedy. It's a human tragedy. And so the exercise from an activist standpoint is how to reveal the larger elements and pictures and take it to the level of soul, not just, cruelty and military and resources. I mean, I've always tried to look at something, not just on a material level, but a spiritual level. And Palestine, Israel is at a spiritual level. And that's why it matters. It's not to say that it's unique. It's not about uniqueness. It's a window.
I think it is unique, though. There's unique about this.
Well, no, what I mean by that is
to say Zionism is a unique form of settler colonialism. I mean, that deployed at a unique time,
right? And
has because of its external support, right? Like they're not an independent country;
Mm-hmm.
they're a totally dependent country.
Yeah.
So it's the whole planet is like doing this insane decades-long group project called Zionism, or at least a chunk of the planet, the powerful parts of the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. That's unique about it. Like, there's nothing, and then because of when it took place, I can't think of anything.
Yeah, no, from that standpoint, it is, of course. It's incredibly unique from that standpoint of all the unique characteristics and timing and so on. I'm just thinking in terms of human suffering and human conflict. But so it's not about measuring and comparing, but for me, it's that it has a significance and is a window on modern life in the 20th and 21st century, like no other places. And so, I mean, Vietnam was horrible. Korea was horrible. I mean, you could just name them, and Kosovo and Croatia and so on. But they somehow weren't the windows that Palestine is on the human condition in the 20th and 21st century. And so, when people begin to recognize that and really internalize that, then they will pay more attention. They will be more active. They will be more insistent. And so, in a way, to take us back to Zatoun, that was the goal of and mission of Zatoun, was to really humanize people, not humanize Palestinians. Humanize people to Palestinians. Yeah. Big difference.
Here, pause for a second. No, okay, now we're continuing again. I wonder, to bring it back to Zatoun, because it was the way that it played out. And so I wasn't living here. I mean, I met you at the beginning, and then I moved away. And I had heard secondhand from my mom and from Heidi, because you were in touch with them and selling them olive oil, about how you've been growing and stuff. And so that, to me, was always like this amazing part of the story. But the olive oil was actually just one small part of it, because it became, as you said, like this human venture. So can you tell us a little bit about when you started Beit Zatoun?
Yeah, Beit Zatoun was another experiment, another adventure.
But it grew out of the oil, right? Because the community you forged from the oil, you suddenly realized, like, there's a whole...
Well, there could not have been a Beit Zatoun, and Beit, by the way, means house, so it's house of olive. And there could not have been a Beit Zatoun without Zatoun. So Zatoun, founded in 2004, Beit Zatoun in 2010. So 6 years of development of Zatoun made Beit Zatoun possible. And really, Zatoun funded it and kept it going, because the whole idea with Beit Zatoun was that it was a partner of Zatoun in a way, because Zatoun was virtual. It had no physical existence. It was out there, and you could get it in California, you can get it in BC, and Beit Zatoun had a physical geography. It was centered in downtown Toronto, in a beautiful building right next to the subway. It was just a dream, and you could invite people to be together in a physical space. You could invite communities, other communities. So Beit Zatoun was never strictly about Palestine or even the Arab world. It was about connecting the entire, range of communities and problems to Palestine and make friends. So what I saw as a problem was that Palestine needed friends. Right? And the only way you could really make friends is by inviting them, the hospitality. People would walk into Zatoun and just feel like, wow, what is this place? I've come home. I've come to this peaceful place where I could be myself. I mean, there are so many glorious parts to Beit Zatoun. I mean, for instance, indigenous communities would come to Beit Zatoun for their talks because that's where they were free to speak. In their own centers, which were federally funded or provincially funded, they weren't allowed to talk and connect politics to culture, to history.
I mean, because Palestine is their struggle too. It's an
exactly.
indigenous people's struggle.
It is, totally. But they couldn't do it in their own centers. So Beit Zatoun was that place where, the intersection of politics and culture and justice could be brought together in one place and opened up to all communities. So, our events came from Asia, Africa, Europe, South America, indigenous. Just a small fraction were actually Palestinian. I'd say maybe 15%. And 25% were from the rest of the Arab world. And 75% were everywhere else. And it was important that also it not be funded by any agency. It had to be self-funded. And that, because that's really the key. Funding is that magic bullet that controls so much of activism and organizations at every level. And it's that umbilical cord that controls us. And it's a difficult one to overcome. I mean, Beit Zatoun, I think, in some respects, was perhaps the only place that was so independent that it could go its own way, regardless of, any of these considerations of funding. And personally, also, I don't have patience for funding or seeking funding. I mean, you've got to put it together. You've got to monitor it. You've got to report on it. No way. No way. I mean, there's no way. So Zatoun made that possible. Zatoun, to a large degree funded Beit Zatoun. I mean, we charged $5. It was nothing. So it could not run on the entry, admission price. That couldn't happen. So Zatoun basically gave the oil that Beit Zatoun sold and helped fund itself, really. And it became a bookstore and an olive oil, and we sold handicraft items from Gaza. It was an organization for deaf children in Gaza. They would make these beautiful handcrafted bookmarks and purses and other things, and we'd sell them. And having a physical space gives you so much more possibilities of things you can do. We could not just have our events. We could have meetings. We could have conferences. We could be a bookstore and selling crafts and keffiyehs and all kinds of things. We never came to being a cafe or anything ongoing. We just didn't have enough staff for that. It was just our real focus was just to to host events more than anything. And so we were open basically from 1 to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whenever the closing was. We had no mornings.
Did you go every day?
Practically.
Wow.
So
I didn't realize it was every day.
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't. We were closed on Mondays.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, excuse me.
We're like a museum. But, 1,000 events. That means,
That's
you've
great,
got to
Robert.
program them. You've got to promote them. Then you've got to actually execute them or set up and do them and then clean up after them and so on. And and there was a certain, a collection of volunteers who were there, who were very reliable, and some who were, of course, were not. I mean, some people would come for a day and try it out and never see them again. But then there was those that were there for the entire 7 years, So, it became a family. It was really a great, great family. And even now I can walk down, downtown Toronto and people talk to me about, how wonderful it was. And, will we ever have another Beit Zatoun type of question?
Should.
Well,
You should just do it online.
Well, that's the thing.
Just do it online.
Beit Zatoun was about people being in the same space, breathing the same air. And
Buddy, this is Toronto.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as being in the same room anymore.
Well,
Everything's a condo.
Well, that's I know.
And that's funny. You guys, the story of Beit Zatoun actually followed the typical story of Toronto's small business, which is getting priced out by condo builders.
Well, yeah.
That's the story of everything good in this city.
Yeah.
Like you guys yourself got sucked up into the same machine.
Absolutely. I mean, we paid the price of the developers. What I mean by that is we didn't own the land. We rented, but the building that we were in fact, the entire block we were part of got sold to a developer, which, by the way, the name of the developer was West Bank.
What? I know. That's awful. Oh, no.
But they had nothing to do with They were from Vancouver, and for some reason they had the name West Bank. But that's what happened. We had to close.
I didn't realize that. Was there? Did you guys have no choice, right?
We had no choice. We had no choice.
A piece of because that, for people who don't know, that corner of Toronto is extremely busy.
Yeah,
and it's got a lot of connections, and it's right by the university, and it's like
it's
the
in the
gateway
middle
to the West End.
It's in the middle of activist Toronto.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be up on St. Clair in a basement or something, it just.
I mean, the city has changed so much since then, too.
Yeah. Well, you see, I mean, when people ask me that, I just think of, okay, well, rents have gone up through the roof, crazy. Traffic has gone through the roof, crazy. People don't want to travel. And then Zoom has taken over, so people don't have to, to go to a place anymore. And so, the conditions, the dialectic of that whole situation mitigates against in-person spaces. It really does. And it's unfortunate. And we're paying a price for that in the sense that, I have a friend, Professor Alan Sears, who spoke at Beit Zatoun a number of times and attended. He talks about the infrastructure of dissent.
Well, it's all online now.
It's all online, but the question about online is that it's also
for good and
so
for bad,
vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's extremely vulnerable. It can get shut down at any time, and you can't build relationships online. I mean,
yes and no, but yes, I see what you're saying.
It's a different level. It's a different level.
Yeah, it's apples and oranges.
It's
There's
apple
no
and
connection.
oranges.
But my point is in all of this is that something I've found with podcasting is that it is itself a community, and as much as they think they can shut you down, you can move. Like you have it's hard. You can't shut down an RSS, and our podcast just exists. So if you build that community, which you already have, here I am pitching you a podcast. But and this is what I say this to a lot of people, if you already have this kind of inbuilt community, and people are surrounding it, there is kind of node around which it goes. A media project is necessary to maintain that community. It doesn't have to be the center of it. It doesn't have to be the only thing. But a media project, especially when we're talking about something like Palestine, which you have these kind of nodal relations to a lot of different other centers, that's something that you could have the conversation with Alan Sears again, but in online form. And a lot of people will see it. And in fact, a lot more people will see it probably
I mean,
than they ever
reach.
would have.
Absolutely.
And that's the trade-off, I feel, is that, and I have been inspired by that in my own work, is that, like my stuff isn't in person, obviously. And I could do stuff in person, but it's not my priority, because I feel that at this point in my life, like it's time to just replicate as much as possible. That's it. Like, take these technologies of broadcasting, of publication, teach them to people and give them the tools, and people create their own shows and create their own networks and bring their own guests on. Because as much as they like to say that, we're going to get shut down, like, you are still allowed to talk. And they can't stop you from talking and listening and talking to other people. They can pretend like it. They can threaten you and make symbolic cases. But for them to chase down every single RSS, every stray thought, they can't do it. They're not gods. There's more of them. If that was possible, they would have shut me down long ago. So I feel that in a conjuncture like this, where neoliberalism has taxed urban life beyond all measure, where all the good things of urban life are just, like, not all, but a ton of them have just been been paywalled to like the highest extent, then this is where we can exist. At least we can have a community, build them around, and then you could have like pop-up Beit Zatoun, I would say. Instead of one place, you say, okay, we're doing a live show this year, and if you're in the Toronto area, come. So I would definitely recommend to you to think about relaunching Beit Zatoun, but as a show.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. We did have Beit Zatoun pop-ups.
Yeah, well, that's true.
In the immediate years after, and then COVID hit, and that kind of killed everything, of course, as well. One of my regrets about Beit Zatoun is that we didn't record anything practically. We didn't take pictures. We didn't record.
Podcaster gulag straight. You're sending you right there. I can't believe that, dude.
Yeah.
That's like that. I just want to go jump out the window. I
Yeah,
can't believe it.
when I think,
that amazing content.
I know. That's, to me.
So now you have to do it. You have to go recreate it, Robert.
Yeah. So the loss of that, all those opportunities. But, it was 2010.
The culture of that wasn't there yet.
The culture of that wasn't there yet. The technology wasn't there yet.
Academics still don't record their shit now.
Yeah. So there you go. And the thing is, recording it is only the beginning. Then you've got to edit it. Then you've got to, put it up, and then you've got to promote it. We didn't have the skill set.
It was just starting. Instagram was just starting.
We didn't have that skill set. And even then, Facebook was usable in those days. It's unusable now. It's unusable for the purposes of promoting a place like Beit Zatoun. Forget it.
Yeah, it is. This is the hard part. I mean, now we're in a media conversation, but the hard part now is starting from scratch when you have nothing and you're a pro-Palestine person or like pro-resistance, because then it's hard to grow. Because the channels for growth are blocked off now. Like when I started, it was still allowed. Like, and then 2020 happened, where every podcast got a lot of attention, and it didn't matter what your ideology, because it was just that moment. But now they shut you down. Like, they don't let you. They stifle you. Let me put it that way. Yeah. But there is other things you can do, though, is that because there are a ton of other shows that already have audiences. And so that's where community networks come in. Anyways, we're turning this into a podcast about podcasting. But I think in some ways, I think it's natural that this conversation went, because a product like Zatoun is obviously the opposite of online, right? It's the most local thing you can do, right? Because it's like this, because people don't know the bottles. Like, the bottles themselves are like heavy. Like, that's a serious, it's not like a joke bottle. It's thick, olive oil bottles are not like.
It's 2.5 pounds. Yeah, it's a kilogram of oil.
So one of those cases that you carried around, like, it is a physical, there is some like weight to it. And then you look at an olive tree. You look at the olive wood. Yeah, it is dense. Yeah. It is amazing. I've actually burnt olive wood before. It's amazing. The heat that you get from olive wood.
It's all oil inside the wood.
Actually, I had it dry. Actually, come to think of it, was it super, super dry by then? I don't remember. It was given to me. Somebody had olive wood for whatever reason.
The oil permeates it and stays there. You can't dry it. It's not like water.
Oh,
it stays there. So, for instance, just to give you an idea, when they press or mill the olives for olive oil, the residue, are this of pits and pulp and so on. That makes the most incredible fires.
Wow.
So after the harvest and the pressing, there's huge feasts of actually cooking open fires that are fueled by the pulp and the pits, and they burn so intensely and so long, you know.
Just a magic
Yeah,
thing.
it is a magic thing, from the leaf to the tree to the wood to even in its kind of destruction or decomposition, it's still useful. It's still something that it gives. Like you said, the giving tree, it doesn't stop giving. And the thing there, I guess, is we need humanity to appreciate that and just gratefully accept those gifts and not work to destroy them. Yeah.
So what do you think the future of Zatoun is now? Obviously, you've retired. It's still happening, though.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's still happening. Well, I was, every organization, whether it's a business or not, faces a point.
A life cycle.
A life cycle. And as the founder, I mean, there's the founder kind of syndrome and challenge that says, okay, well, I'm not going to live forever. I'm not going to be able to do this forever. So what is the succession? So needing to build to a succession idea or plan, and then be ready there's a window that appears, and be ready to take that window. And so I went through that process, and part of it started really out of October 7th. October 7th was like inundated with I had 400 orders backlog. And that was just me really doing it and using very kind of archaic copy and paste technology. This is not Amazon. It's not transactional. So, when I built it in a way, I really built it with a view to relationships, not transactions. Right. And relationships are necessarily time-consuming and slow. And basically October 7th blew that right out of the water. So I ended up with a backlog of 400. I had to shut down the websites, or not shut down the website, but stop taking orders. And it took me 7 weeks to get through it, to get through the backlog. And
well, you're going to get a backlog again from this podcast, let me tell you. I hate to break it to you, but listen, folks, buy this olive oil. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's something special. You can dip. Oh, I had it this morning.
Yeah. Well, and that's again, it's the humble olive. And when people say, well, what's so special about, Zatoun? And I always say, Zatoun is just basic, excellent olive oil. It's humble. It doesn't have, because, olive oils these days, like most things in a commoditized world, you sex them up and you sell them on the sizzle.
Well, there's a lot of fraudulent one, too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like a whole olive oil
There's
fraudulent mafia.
Well, that's been going on for ages. Actually, if your listeners are interested, there's an article that was printed in 2007 in the New Yorker, and it was called Extra Virginity, the scam in olive oils. And it's like 7 pages, but it tells you everything you need to know about, that whole picture of scamming olive oil. And the man went on to write a whole book about it, but you can get the idea from 7 pages. And things haven't changed. They've actually gotten worse because of the high price of olive oil. And and people really.
So how do they do it? They put fake oil. They use
There's adulteration, but there's also it's not just the adulteration of putting hazelnut oil and other oils in there, but it's also the way it's produced. It's refined. So, for instance, you might be getting oil that is 7 years old. So so it's like everything else that's commoditized. You're basically, what's driving you is not the quality, it's the price. So they will buy, if it's a really low-priced year, they'll buy all the olives and warehouse them, and then just regurgitate it over time. And so
these are the Western companies.
Western companies, and also Europeans. Like, for instance, in Italian olive oil. Well, a great percentage of Italian olive oil is actually not olives from Italy, but olives from Tunisia and olives from elsewhere that are actually processed in Italy and bottled in Italy. So, and then oil is kind of manufactured as opposed to pressed and bottled. It's almost like mayonnaise. You know, you can break it down and reconstitute it. That's the way they do orange juice too. So again, so the watchword here is industrial. When you get into any kind of industrial brand, industrial commodity, you know, for that profit, you're giving up not just taste, but you're giving up the characteristics that really give it all the benefit. Like olive oil has incredible benefits, to the skin, to ingestion. It's just when you start looking into the benefits of olive oil, but they only work if you have excellent quality olive oil. You can't get it from a grocery store olive oil. You're not going to get
Robert,
those benefits.
Do you know how many bottles of olive oil you are selling right now to the people who are listening? Do you understand how good of a marketeer you are?
Well, for me, I'm a terrible salesman, really.
No, you're not. Trust me.
But Zatoun, I believe in, for sure. In case your listeners want, it's Zatoun, Zatoun.
I'm going to link to it.
.com.
Oh, you're going to get lots of sales. Don't worry.
Okay. It's just a funny name, And for me, it's actually interesting. I should say something about the name. I really worked at making the name really simple. And because Arabic speakers come up to me and say, Zatoun, what's that tune? It's Zaytoun. And it's like, I don't care.
Oh, because you didn't put the Y in?
Yeah, you don't put the Y in. You don't put it's like my audience is an English-speaking audience. So it has to have easy to pronounce, easy to recognize. So, it's like you have to be clear about who this is for and why. And I think Zatoun has really achieved its purpose. And I'm eternally grateful for that. Part of me is sad to have given it up, but I'm glad that, I gave it up at a time when there was somebody who could take it over and continue it. Because if I had missed that window of succession, it would have completely closed down and there'd be nothing. So in a way, that's what you, as a founder, you need to look out for, is that window when you can pass it on, as opposed to it just disappears.
Thank you, Robert.
It's a pleasure to see you again.
20 years. I can't believe it. Okay, stop.